Hey everyone, it's Nicole. Today I'm here to talk about The Raven King by Maggie Stiefvater, which I just read, and look, I'm in a new place. It doesn't mean that I moved away, it actually means that I have more rooms than you expected. It is nice to change things around sometimes, and I actually loved the book. Even though some of the things didn't turn out the way I expected them to be, I am still happy that I guessed something because I love being right. If you didn't pick up The Raven King yet, I envy your willpower. Also, I'm going to link the video for the first book because this video is going to be spoilery, and if you didn't pick up the series at all but you're thinking about it, you really need to check out the first review. Now let's talk about The Raven King itself. I wasn't frustrated even a little bit with this book, which is such a pleasant and soothing feeling. I love the journeys that the characters were able to make through the whole 4 books. The plot also is not very neatly wrapped up, which I actually think is realistic because it gives the readers an opportunity to think what's going to happen with these characters and what kind of adventures they're going to have in the future. It was very well done overall. I might even say that it's one of my favorite series of all time. But let's talk about the book in detail because I'm running out of things to say. Obviously, the major question that the plot was leading us to is, will Gansey going to die? And is Glendower even real? Turns out Glendower is actually dead, like nature intended him to. And the kids are heartbroken, especially Gansey, because what the fuck they've been doing for 4 books if not looking for Glendower? And I actually found this decision brilliant. We were expecting a lot, the plot was building up towards this moment, and whoa, Glendower is not even a real thing. So they cannot have a favor, and also, what does it mean in terms of other predictions and in terms of other fortunes that have been told? Funnily enough, the question of 3 slippers is still out in the open. If we're not considering Gwenllian a slipper, we still have 2 slippers. Doesn't mean there's going to be a continuation to the series. As to Gansey death, I believe everyone already knew that it's going to happen. When you read the first chapter of the 4th book, it starts with his point of view, and he says upfront that in this book he's going to die. Also, everyone around me was theorizing Gansey's resurrection, which I also believed in, because his death, even though approaching, didn't seem all that dangerous for some reason. It didn't seem like a real threat. The more interesting question is the fact that Gansey brought it up on himself, and the fact that his death was actually a consequence for his own actions. Since Glendower turned out to be dead and the whole quest pointless in the end, it seems to me that the whole group, the Raven Boys and Blue, actually made Gansey's death happen. It is such an interesting time loop, and Maggie Stiefvater plays with time a lot in this book. Even at the end, Ronan finds a part of the pig in the forest, and he thinks that it went from somewhere else, from a different timeline, and it lays there because they've had a different adventure at some point. And when it comes to time, our characters actually realize that it's getting to the point when the quest is going to end and they have to do something after it. They have to think about their future, which is much more terrifying than fighting a demon or finding Glendower dead. Let's take Blue, that finally realizes that she's not one of the Raven Boys and she doesn't have the same privilege. She can't go to a great college because she doesn't have money. She isn't even sure that she wants to go, and if she'd have to choose, she'd prefer travel and seeing other places. It also turns out to be that she's not human, which complicates things. She's actually a tree. I don't know where it came from. Blue doesn't know what she's going to do because the death of Gansey is coming, she knows about it, she is used to this idea. She wants to build her life in certain fashion, but she doesn't have resources to do it. Then there's also Gansey, who finally realizes that he doesn't want to die because he enjoys these new relationships that he has with Blue and that peace that he finally found with his friends. Then there's Noah, who is certainly dying and is not going to be resurrected, and we know about it because it's very devastating. His death is constantly playing out in the book. He doesn't want to die as well, but he knows that it's coming and that he's not going to be material anymore. It's a very sad part of the book, but it reminds me of Peter Pan in some way. Interestingly enough, Noah is the most magical of them all because he's not even material human. His whole core is magical. There's nothing non-magical about him. And by dying and letting them all go without him, he's closing this part of their childhood that was magical. Also, the magical forest is dead, and Adam is no longer magical as well. There's only Ronan. And if we look into it, Ronan and Blue are the ones that remain somewhat childish and whimsical, because Ronan doesn't want to leave for college, doesn't want to end his education. He is closed off in his barn that is completely dreamlike, so he won't deal with the real world outside of the barns. And Blue is still somewhat attached to her roots, to being an actual tree, and to her family house. Also, a lot of women from this house, a lot of her relatives, moved past it. There's a couple of very well written dynamics in these books. Henry Chang, that was introduced in the third book, is very fleshed out in this one and actually emerges to be a friend of the group, a real friend of the group, and it happens over a couple of chapters really. At the end of the book, he is in somewhat of triumvirate with Blue and Gansey. I will even suggest a polyamorous relationship. There are some hints. It's very vague and at the same time pointed at. Persephone, I believe, talked about how 3 is the best number and 2 is a number of conflicts. I wouldn't be much opposed to that because they seem to be very close and they seem to be very right for each other. Then there's relationships between Adam and Ronan. I actually was surprised how well they are working together. Ronan finally had the guts to kiss Adam and proclaim his feelings by that, and Adam had to choose. He was very aware of Ronan's feelings nevertheless, but now when Ronan made his step, Adam had to make one as well to finally decide if he wants to give these relationships a chance. And I loved how Maggie wrote bisexuality into this book. It's not something Adam even questions. He just questions if these feelings for Ronan are real and material, or it is based on Adam's past experiences and seeing how Ronan is a part of a very loving family, a partly dead family, but still a loving family, how his surroundings, the barns, are made of love, basically. There is also a moment where he sees the barns and he thinks about his poor past, about how he doesn't have a lot of money and a lot of privilege and a lot of opportunities, but with Ronan, he even says so that if he'd wanted, he'd have it, he'd have these barns, he could live there, because he knows that if he'll say yes to Ronan, he's going to have it all. He's going to have everything Ronan has. And he constantly questions if these feelings are real, if they're based on true attraction, or is it just him being selfish and wanting what Ronan has. I found this proposal kiss in Ronan's bedroom wonderful, but then the one after Adam's talk with Gansey, where Gansey says, you cannot play games with Ronan, he's more vulnerable than you think he is. And Adam says, I know, I'm not dumb. I understand what Ronan is. And then after everyone leaves and Ronan approaches him again, he decides that he wants it and he kisses them back. It's such a wonderful scene and I really loved this dynamic and how it played out in the end. Adam actually smoothes all the Ronan's sharp edges, and I feel like Adam for Ronan is a very healthy option. In the end, Ronan, I feel, finally finds his family. In the face of Adam, in the face of his friends, and he also reunites with his brothers, which turned out to be a surprise for me because Declan turned out to be not so bad. And even though Ronan was certainly heartbroken over his mother's death, it was a very tragic moment in the book, he still was able to build something for himself, some kind of future that he was was glad to have. Adam's character development is somewhat similar because he's also grieving his family, and when in the end of the novel, in the last chapter, he visits his family, we know that he has Ronan and his friends, but we don't know about his relationships with his family and with his father especially. He gets to finally say everything that he thinks to his father, to his face, and he also reunites with his mother that although is cowardly, is ready to have some kind of relationship with Adam. He had pretty tough experiences besides the abuse that he suffered in his home. Because of it, he's also deaf on one ear. Even though he doesn't talk about it a lot, we can read a lot into his monologue in the end that he's actually concerned about it and that he's still hurt. It was one of the things that actually bothered him a lot because it's the thing that he cannot change that was taken from him. It was the symbol of his father taking his agents and what demon possessed him. It was his greatest fear unfolded because he lost control of his hand, he lost control of his eye. It was the most terrifying scene to me in the whole book, to be honest. Basically in this moment he's at most vulnerable. And we see a lot of characters in this book at their most vulnerable state, but always they're surrounded by friends. For example, when Adam is blindfolded, and when Ronan loses his mother, and Gansey loses his faith in Glendower and cries because Glendower is dead. There's also Noah, who is constantly killed in this book. Then there's also Blue that realizes that her father is a coward and that she is a magical tree person. I feel like this book wasn't thought up to be the answer to all the questions, which it wasn't. It was made to make you feel attachment to these characters. I adored this series and I don't know if I ever will encounter something similar to it because it's really exceptional. In the comments down below I wanted to mention the scenes that you thought to be the most emotional, in good or in bad way, that you felt are the most tragic or terrifying or funny or cute or sweet. Whatever you want to mention it in the comments down below. I hope you enjoyed this book as much as I did, and I hope to see you soon in my next video.